Aloha, namaste. This is Radha, and I'm here to talk about our full moon, which is coming up on the 21st. It's going to be at 3:08 p.m. Hawaii time, which is 6:08 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And this full moon is happening in a star called Mula. Mula, as many of you know, is the root. And this is one of the most intense stars out of the 27 nakshatras. This is where we really dig deep and pull up what's not working. And the specific place that it's happening, of course, it's going to be different in each of our charts in terms of what house and area of our life it rules. But in terms of the natural progression of the signs is it's coming right after Scorpio. It's the very beginning of Sagittarius. And if we think about Scorpio being this sort of deep emotional abode where we're really facing our deepest fears and trying to shed light on them and trying to shed light on the places that we tend to stuff into the corners, we see this new place of Mula specifically being the place where we have to uproot the beliefs that we are holding. And we often don't recognize the link of those shadows and those fears to what we believe. We think we just believe what we believe because that's what we were taught, or maybe we went out in the world and found new beliefs separate from our families. We've, read certain things. We've had different media influence throughout our life. We live in whatever society we live in, surrounded by the types of people we're around. And we kind of have this assumption that our beliefs are this thing outside of ourselves that we've cultivated or that we've chosen. And, we might have recognition for the fact that our beliefs could be instilled in us at a young age, but it's harder to see the place where what we believe in an external sense, like if someone were to ask us what our beliefs were on various topics or what, spiritual practices we follow, or ideas we subscribe to, it's more difficult to see how the beliefs that we hold are more layered than that. We might have a specific system we subscribe to, or not believing in a system is also that. But we might not understand the ways in which the different sort of traumas and dramas and Scorpio type themes play into how we believe what we believe. Because the truth is, as much as the outside world wants us to think that we all fit in these little boxes, we don't, right? Our beliefs are multi-layered, and little threads of what one group or person might believe fits in with other threads. And we just kind of tend towards groups of people that mostly have the same beliefs as us. But really, our beliefs are pretty intricate. And there's beliefs that are less acknowledged. We might have like a confirmation bias towards a specific type of information. We might have beliefs about people, which really show up more like judgments. We might think we see a certain kind of person dressed a certain kind of way, or we interact with a certain kind of person, and we have all these beliefs about what that person's going to be like, or what that person is like. And we actually can peg them like that based on our previous experiences, right? Based on all the other people we've met in our life. Maybe we had a bad relationship with somebody that this person reminds us of, and we've instantly hit a belief system we have that we wouldn't necessarily think was a belief system. But if we started talking about it enough to somebody that we trusted, or somebody that we, felt like we could vent to, they would hear a whole slew of things that we believe that are not necessarily things we associate ourselves with believing. This is where some of our deeper layers of emotional turbulence can come into play, where we're not recognizing. And I say turbulence because it's not our peace, right? Our inner peace is not walking around judging, different people, or having all these fears arise in these different situations. This is the part of us that is afraid. This is the part of us that has seen a bug and made it into a dragon, or the part of us that has had a scary experience at some point in time and continue to replay that in other situations that are not the same. This is the part of us that is afraid of the dark. And it's also the part of us that's courageous enough to go into the dark with a light and see what's there, right? And all of us have a different relationship with that. But often every month, as the moon transits through Scorpio, we're forced to reckon with that. And whatever house Scorpio is for you is the place that that happens for you. You know, whether it's your first house as a Scorpio Lagna, or whether it's your seventh house as a Taurus Lagna, or whether it's your 10th house as an Aquarius Lagna, it's a place where there's some fear that you have to reckon with. And there's, you know, for lack of better words, some ghosts that are haunting you. And you need to face those in order to pass that fear. Well, the nature of the spot between the space between Scorpio and Sagittarius, there's this Gandanta point there, this karmic knot. So Scorpio ends and there's no nakshatra that goes into the next one, right? Sagittarius begins with Mula. And so we begin in this place without necessarily assimilating what we just did and what we just learned into this new realm called these are all my beliefs and this is what I think of things. And if something doesn't fit into my beliefs, I'm going to rip it up by the roots. I'm going to create chaos. Nariti, the goddess of chaos, rules this particular star of Mula. And there's a very intense energy. It is right across the way from Ardra. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can show you the planetary lineup that we are working with. So now you should be able to see my chart here. And we can see the moon is here at 655 Mula. And across the way in Gemini, we have the sun, Venus, and Mercury, all in Ardra. This is the star that sort of, I would say balances Mula, but it's also very intense. Ardra is translated as the wet one or the moist one and is symbolized by a drop of water. And you can imagine that this place in the sky is where we might find ourselves creating some calamity that might look like a storm. Ardra is ruled by Rudra, the howler, the fierce form of Shiva, and really kind of his original Vedic form that has this very wild and uncontainable nature. The story is that when Rudra was created, he was also created with Rudrani, his counterpart, his feminine counterpart. And the creator said, go out and propagate, you know. And so 11 Rudras and 11 Rudranis were then formed. And they went out and created chaos all over the world. They, you know, all these things that we see, like poisonous bugs, poisonous plants, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, you know, disease, inimical energy amongst people. All of these things came into being through these 11 Rudras. And then he was like, okay, come back, children, enough. And he had them come back together, join back together. And they came back to being one Rudra and one Rudrani. And he said, now go meditate. And they did. And then they came back as Shiva and Parvati. Shiva being the auspicious one, Parvati being the one who is higher. And so we see how our mind, you know, because it's the realm of Gemini, it's this mental realm, can create all this turmoil in our world, in our inner world that we then create out in the outer world to, you know, to have a physical manifestation of what we're imagining. And it requires us to pull ourselves into a state of calm and meditation in order to rectify all of that external drama, right? The happenings, the things that are happening to us. And, you know, that showing up in the form of disease and poison and geological events. And so when we think of this being the place where our energy is largely held, right? The cycle of the full moon comes in and shows us like the opposite energy of what the new moon is representing and what we're holding in that space. And in this particular case, our new moon in Gemini is actually happening after the full moon. We've had this for a little while where our full moon has actually come before our new moon. So we're getting kind of that apex of the month a little early in the sun's cycle. And it's reflecting back to us the fact that all the information in the world, all the knowledge that we might be gaining in Gemini is nothing if we don't take a stand at some point, if we don't have a belief of something. We can't just kind of continue to dip ourselves in the river of information without making it mean something. That's where Sagittarius comes in. This is where we form beliefs, and we need to form beliefs. You know, we have to have a thought and it has to mean something. We can't just be swimming in a sea of ideas. There has to be some point where we pull it together and take a stand in some direction. And if we're wrong, we have to be willing to readjust that. And that's really where Mula comes in, because we are wrong about all kinds of things all the time, right? We might be wrong about individual people and judgments that we have. We might be wrong about whole philosophies that we hold. We might be wrong about our political beliefs. I mean, we probably are, because if we have any, they're inherently erred, because there's so much wrong with the system that for us to choose any one of those sides, there's something, you know, there's many pins we've had to stick in that in order to have that belief system. And so once we get to Mula, we start to see those pins that we've stuck in things, and we start to see the places where our beliefs were flawed because they didn't always work out. You know, in Scorpio, we see also our fears that come from, say, losing somebody that we love, forming a relationship in the 7th house and then having to be fearful of losing that relationship, or maybe the person dies. You know, these kind of big traumatic events that we have to deal with. Often the hardest one is feeling alone, or having something we care about taken from us. And so here we have to recognize that maybe the beliefs we've held haven't helped us, right? The beliefs we've held have either taken us into more attachment and more things to lose, or they've taken us into being so afraid that we don't get close to people, or that we are unwilling to fully commit to something because we have so much fear around having it taken away from us. We have to face the different ways in which the results we're receiving in our life might not be the ones we want, and it might not just be doing it differently. There might be something in our foundation that is having us make choices that aren't actually aligned with what we want to believe, what we think we believe, you know. And so Mula, we have this opportunity to really uproot that, but it's often uncomfortable. It can feel very much like we're ripping out the core of ourselves, and it can be very scary. And especially with all these planets across the way in Ardra, we're really reckoning with the storm, right? The storm we've created and the roots of what we need to rip out that's not working. And maybe some of that is that confirmation bias that allows only certain information to come in, the information we want to receive. And we actually don't realize it, but we're filtering out all this other information. We're not being objective, and we think we are. Gemini is where we believe we're being objective. And Sagittarius shows us where we're not, where we're very much mired in some actual set of ideals and beliefs and judgments and things that inspire us. And so the more we can turn towards higher teachings and things that really do inspire us, and things that really allow us to embody what we believe. And this is super important, because there can be all the words spoken on earth, but if the actual things we're doing and the practices we're doing don't help us bring closer to that, then we're not, then for what are our beliefs? What's the point of them? It's one of the reasons that I so love the Vedic sciences, because they're interwoven in such a way where there are actual things we can do. We don't just believe in something, we do something, right? We say mantras, we do specific poses, we go through the stages of meditation. We give and receive in the world, we engage with others with a certain code of conduct. And all of these things bring us closer to that state that we describe with our philosophies and ideals and beliefs. And so this is a really important thing to look at within the different belief systems you have. How are they working? Are they working well? And what could be different, or where could you find a change in that? We have a lot of powerful energy here with our moon having just also passed through Drishti from Mars and Jupiter. So if you can just look on the 20th and the 19th, and even the end of the 18th, and we had the moon here in Scorpio, where it really is a little challenge, as I've been saying. But we also had, actually, as I'm filming this right now, this is the chart pretty much. And we have Jupiter right across from the moon and Mars giving a one-way 8th house drishti here. So if you get my weekly stars report, then you read about this, where it's like this moment, and I can feel it in this day, that I like in this moment while I'm filming this energy from Jupiter that is like a hopefulness, like hanging on to those beliefs that are uplifting us and that are reminding us that sometimes the truth we know is true doesn't show up the way that we want it to in our world. And we have to reckon with the discomfort of the unknown, or things being out of our control and different than how we want them to be. And the 8th house really showing us how those things can be out of our control. This 8th house drishti, excuse me, Mars is in his own sign of Aries, giving a one-way 8th house drishti to the moon. And again, the degrees are super close here, right? So we can see also how our fears and our courage are being reflected to us by the owner, the ruler of Scorpio. So the moon is in challenge dignity here, but getting these drishtis that are reminding us of our courage and reminding of us of our hope and our inspiration. So perhaps we're getting flashes of that right now, and these downloads of how we can show up to help face some of the things that bring us fear and move closer to what we believe to be true. So that by the time this full moon hits and the moon moves into Mula, we have an opportunity to really be precise in what we rip up by the roots, because that's one of the things that can come up here, is this sort of just ripping everything out. Just like take it all out, throw the baby out with the bathwater, and not recognizing that we need to carefully prune or carefully weed around things that are planted that are solid. And of course, we do have this energy of Venus and Mercury joined the sun. One of the things is that they're both very close to the sun. Particularly Venus has been really close to the sun for a while now. So this actually might feel a little farther away than she has been, because she's been really just in those hot rays of the sun for over a week now. And so this is actually a little bit of a breath of fresh air for particularly Venus. But Venus and Mercury are also in really good dignity. They're in really good intelligence here in Gemini. We have a capacity to use our communication in our relationships, to use our mind and our intellect in our relationships, to make sure that we're being balanced. This is one of the things, it's funny, we often think of Libra as the sign of balance, and Libra has a lot to do with bringing things into balance and wanting things to be balanced and the harmony of that. Gemini actually has this natural masculine feminine balance built into it. It is the masculine and it is the feminine, and it has this quality of mating. Mithuna is this act, this sort of sexual act of bringing together those two polar opposites, but it also has this discernment and this objectivity, this lack of passion and emotionality, so that we're able to really keep things in that balanced realm where we're more lighthearted and we're more flexible and we're more willing to see things from all different sides, and we perceive them through the mind. We perceive things through the mind. So this is being reflected back to this moon that really wants to just rip everything up and make judgments. We're getting this download maybe from our relationships we're in, or depending on what Venus rules for you. So if it's your ruling planet or your 10th lord, it might be coming from other people or from your career, where you're receiving this download of like the the ease that can be if you just let things above board and talk about them. If you just allow what's going on in your mind to come out, we can start to organize some of that. And then Mercury in his own sign obviously has very good communication. So we become better with our words and better at explaining ourselves and better at sharing with people what's coming up in our mind without all the passion, without all the angst, without all the drama. And so this is really helpful for us here. It can help soften it and make it feel a little more easeful, even with the intensity of this, Ardra Mula axis. Ardra is ruled by Rahu, the north node, and Mula is ruled by Ketu, the south node. So there's sort of a built-in intensity. And then we have the Rudra and Niriti rulership. And then it's funny because they're actually in the squares with Ketu and Rahu themselves. Rahu's in Pisces, Ketu's in Virgo, and the other Jupiter and Mercury signs are now holding this full moon and all of the planets with the sun. So there's a lot of energy here we're reckoning with, and it's a wild time to be alive in so many ways. And I think that for each of us, the best way we can really harness these energies on the full and new moon is if we understand like where it's happening in our chart, because that's really going to show us what kind of realm of beliefs we're talking about here. So that's why I do these reports for all 12 signs. I do them weekly, and I show what the different transits of the week are going to do. So you would, understand how the 19th is actually a really important day, this day that I'm filming this, with all these drishtis and what it meant for your sign, where it is in your house, what does Mars rule for you, what does Jupiter rule for you, what is Taurus for you. All these different factors come into when I'm writing these forecasts. They really bring in and interweave quite a lot of knowledge all at once, like being able to see all the different things and hold that and bring it into an experience for the person who is reading it. So I put a lot of energy into these, and I do them for the full and new moon as well. So they're part of the weekly report for this week is that full moon. And what are you highlighting this month for you specifically? What have you been working with this energy in Gemini? And what is Sagittarius bringing up for you? What's the opposite of that Gemini energy that you're reckoning with? What area of your life is it? For all of us, these full moons show an axis point somewhere in our chart, and they show where the one side has been getting the energy and the other side perhaps hasn't been. And what can we do to bring that natural balance in, where we see how the axes work together? All the different houses that are across from each other inform each other. We need them both in balance with one another. And so these reports I do can be really helpful for that. You can look at them at www.patreon.com/Radha Home Astrology. And I also have a link to that on my website, which is just radhahomeastrology.com. And I'll put the information in the description. I hope you have a blessed and beautiful full moon, and I will see you soon. Namaste.